All right, welcome to the Conviction Fiction, where we explore the human stories behind the journey of reentry. All right, on today's episode, which is titled Man in the Mirror, Facing Yourself After Incarceration, we're going to dive into one of the most powerful and challenging aspects of life after prison. That's self reflection and accountability. Reentry isn't just about finding a job or a place to live, it's also about facing yourself, your choices, your past, and the person you want to become. This process of looking in the mirror, accepting responsibility, and committing to change is a critical step in building a new life. Without it, true growth and transformation can feel out of reach. So, as we explore this topic, let me share a powerful quote by Socrates. The unexamined life is not worth living. For many returning citizens, incarceration forces a period of deep examination. But the real work begins when you step back into the world and choose to continue that process, confronting not just what you've done, but who you are and who you want to be. So, in this episode, we'll hear stories of transformation, discuss the importance of self awareness, and offer tools to help anyone facing their own man in the mirror moment. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. As everyone knows, I'm Antoine Rivers, the host of the Conviction Fiction, and we're going to get into um, the man in the mirror, being able to face yourself. And of course, while we're on the show, I want to also introduce um, our trusty co host. That's going to be Eric McDaniel. Everyone, please give Eric a round of applause. There we go. Thanks for joining us today, Eric.
Welcome,
So the
glad to
man
be
in
here.
the Yeah, glad to have you. Glad to have you as always. So, self-reflection and accountability after incarceration is definitely something that many of us have to do. We have to take responsibility for where we are, what we did, and what we are trying to accomplish. All right. So this is a topic that I know you have been very interested in talking about. Anyway, correct, Eric?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a must. It's an old African proverb that says, "If there is no enemy within, the world can do you no harm." And so, in this transformation that we all should welcome coming out of incarceration and back into society, uh, you know, dealing with the man in the mirror is having acceptance of where you are in life. Uh, you can have acceptance from some of the choices that were made that allowed you to be incarcerated, and you can have acceptance that that is part of the past and now I have to create a newness. um, there's a saying that says wherever you go you take you with you. So dealing with the man in the mirror is of utmost importance because if you want something different you got to do something different. Before you can do something different you got to think something different. And so, for me, far as dealing with the guilt, the shame, the insecurity, the anger, the rage, the unforgiveness, um, those things I had to deal with on a personal level and coming out really before I got out doing my incarceration. And so getting out with the stigmas and all of the things set forth for reentry, I didn't have to deal with parole or anything like that. I EOS my sentence, but I still had to get back into society. As much as small things, that could trigger you if you're not trying to grow and be strong on the inside and have acceptance of your current condition, where you are, a new starting point, having to get back out in the workforce, accumulate uh, stability in home, putting yourself in position to be able to get a vehicle, and all of the things that are the norms out here. Um, you can find any excuse if you're not dealing with the man in the mirror to give up or to stay stagnated. And that's one of the worst things, to be stagnated. I had to deal with the man in the mirror on a level of understanding that my past was my past, but how I live today was going to be able to benefit me in the future. That was a saying I used to say, you are the person today because of the person you were yesterday. But if I apply myself today, it'll be beneficial tomorrow. So those were little things that I would try to say to move forward, encourage myself to create a newness and not allow the past to dictate me, but to make sure some of those things that we hide in our core self didn't try to come back and push me in some places that would hinder me from moving forward.
That's a good point that you were saying, Eric. Everything that you talked about with facing yourself. And I had to ask myself that question. What does facing the man in the mirror means? Does it mean to me? And for me, it meant to have an unbiased, unfiltered look at myself, the good and the bad. And what I found is that I had a lot of bad traits. I was not the best son. I was not the best father. I was not the best brother. I was not the best friend that I could be. When you're talking about the criminal personality, you're talking about antisocial personality disorder, because that's a real thing. People are or can be diagnosed as being criminal. Of course, you know this, Eric. We kind of studied in the same field. But when it comes to that disorder, we are people of extreme confidence. I know when we are coming up throughout our lives, people always say, well, it's self-esteem. You want to have high self-esteem about yourself. You want to be confident, right? But with the criminal, that can actually work into con games, right? Because that's what confidence is all about when it comes to criminal behavior. It's about being able to con or put enough confidence in someone that they will believe you and you swindle them out of their money, right? This is where we get
Right.
our robbers. This is where we get our thieves. This is where we get those people that can take advantage of vulnerable situations. So being honest with myself, facing that man in the mirror was a moment where I had to strip myself of that confidence, saying, "Hey, you're not who you think you are," right? Because I had built myself up to being this all powerful, honest human being that just took advantage of a system that has taken advantage of me. Okay,
Right.
so being able to face that man in the mirror was a very, it's one of those things that you have to do, as it is part of um, being able to create a solid foundation for moving forward. And that's about taking responsibility, just understanding, like, not to beat yourself up. We're not saying look in the mirror and say, oh, you're just a terrible person, because everyone has good and bad traits. But when it comes to coming back after prison period, I don't care how long you've been in. If you are just returning to the streets, you have to really face yourself to understand what led you there and what changes do you need to make to prevent you from going back for something similar or even something different, just from going back to prison. Okay.
Right.
There are some emotional challenges of confronting past mistakes. So I guess I wanted to ask you, Eric, what was your mirror moment when you had to truly face yourself?
Well, actually, it was before I was released
Mhm.
that I had to look at, where I was in life. I had to look at the people that depended on me
Mhm.
and what I had reduced myself, and that was not an easy thing to see.
Mhm.
You know, the manipulative Eric, the selfishness, like you're saying, the alter ego, the narcissistic person. Uh, all of those things I had to kind of deal with. But my foundation, just for me, was was reading the Word of God. I'm a believer, so that gave me a point of reference, and in that
Mhm.
point of reference, it allowed me to be able to really. I didn't know who I was until I came into a greater understanding of who Christ was.
Mhm.
A lot of the rage, the anger, I was able to see myself for what it really was, and to have a greater understanding that I couldn't do it on my own. That was
Mhm.
the big thing for me, was the understanding that that was a life to be lived out there. But I had to renew my mind to some things.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
those
All right. So acknowledging your past mistakes or the impact of your journey is very important. Now, I also ask myself those same questions, including what role does accountability play in building trust with others? And especially with my family and friends, right? If I want to be honest with my family and friends, then I definitely need to be honest with myself, right? If I'm coming back into society, not I mean, starting over. A lot of us, when we get out, we have to start over. Many of us use transition houses or reentry places in order to get ourselves on our feet. Others rely on friends and family. And those friends and family know you from, they may have seen the change while you were, in your letters, but they haven't been around you like that. So now that you are put in a position where they can see you day to day on an everyday basis, it's very important to build trust with those others. And the only way
Mhm.
that you can do that is to honestly take a look at yourself in the mirror and face who you are and understand, like, okay, this is where I am. I need these people. So I need to be honest with myself. I mean, even if that means, um, just complete transparency with them. There are some emotional challenges that could come with that. So to make yourself vulnerable to people that you've relied on them forever. I know these people that you are calling your friends and family when you are out, they're probably the same people that sent you money or made sure you had postcards and Christmas boxes and all that. They probably were those people. But now you're there back with them, and now you can actually contribute in a meaningful way. And it's very important for them to have trust in you. Now, what was your mirror moment? I think I asked you this. What was your mirror moment? But what role does accountability play when it comes to building trust with your friends and family? What was your journey?
My journey, first and foremost, beyond the family, it was with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn to, like you said, love myself. I had to learn to forgive myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had to, before I could do others, that was the big thing. When you say in the street, ain't no future in front. Some of the masquerades and things that I was to other people. There were some people that I knew I rubbed wrong in my family, outside of my family, and I had to have acceptance when I got out that I gave them that. At the same time, I had to keep on the forefront to learn to love myself, to be who authentic Eric was, the good, bad, the ugly, everything, and try to make the necessary changes to grow out of those negatives into the positives. So with
Mm-hmm.
my family, I got a very loving family, and openly embraced me. They were there, whatever need in my transition out. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a blessing, but that was a place outside of my family, friends. One thing about being incarcerated, you really find out who your true friends are. There are people you find out was just associates. When you get locked up, no mail, no checking on the family, no anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that did was that allowed me to have a small circle when I got out. It was basically just family and a few friends, and I wanted to hit the ground running, to be busy, get involved with kind of things that will move me towards some of my goals I had set. And
Mm-hmm.
so I knew at that time I didn't have time to waste, because I had lived my life so long working to be unprofitable in some areas, and to realize that the wasted time, the wasted energy, trying to be everything to everybody. That's when I talk about the masquerades. But as I learned to, love myself and have acceptance to where I was, and incorporate God in whatever I did, that was the fuel that helped me to persevere, because even in the family, everybody will truly know you, the person you was before you went and when you got out. But
Mm-hmm.
if you continue to grow, a lot of times, even among family, they may not accept a new person, and
Great.
that's a whole nother thing. And so, if you're not doing it for yourself, people say, "Hey, I'm gonna change for my mom or for my children or for my wife. That's limited change. You know, if it's not on the inside and you're doing it for yourself, man, you fall prey to whatever going on out here. Another thing is there are no excuses. And what I'm saying that is that regardless of whatever situation we are in, as long as we incorporate God in it and take the necessary steps to love yourself and move in a way that you know is going to be beneficial for yourself, you know, I found that to be productive in my life. But it all
Awesome.
started with me learning to love me getting to a place to
Mhm.
uh, put where I was trying to go on the forefront. It wasn't so much my daughter, my mother, and others. It was learning to love me, and I kind of, as the years went by, I'm falling in love with that. To be the authentic Eric. You know, I like classical music. Hey, you know, it was a time I was ashamed of telling anybody I like classical music. You know. So, but listen, you know, it was too much. It's especially too much at this point in my life to not be the authentic me. And the people that accept me, I'm gonna love them, and the people that don't, I'm gonna love them. But you know, that process of getting started when you're getting out, I would just encourage others. It is a process. It's has a term called cognitive dissonance or dissonance. It's moving in an area that's unfamiliar. It's like being a right-handed person taking a pencil in your left hand. You know, it feels unnatural, but that is part of the process we have to deal with because being incarcerated allows you to be in arrested development. You know, you got somebody telling you what to do, when to do, how to do it. You limited in your goings and comings. You know, you're behind a fence and with guards, and so you know if you're not starting while you're in there to work on you and learning to love you and desire more out of yourself, uh, we set ourselves up to be swallowed up when it's time to get out.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I want to appreciate that take on the responsible part, because a lot of us do say that we want to change for someone else when that true change can only come when you are changing for yourself. Now, taking responsibility is that foundation for moving forward, right? Because if you don't, then you're really not changing. Taking that responsibility for past actions is just a step in the reentry process. It's the cornerstone of meaningful change. I believe that acknowledging what went wrong is about more than admitting guilt. It's more about owning the consequences of your choices and understanding their impact on others. And that's what I really stress around my household. I mean, it's okay with the decision that you made, but you can't go whining and being upset about the consequences, because if you are to make decisions, then you should be willing to deal with the consequences of those
Mm,
decisions. Okay, that's what responsibility is. Responsibility is taking an action, whether it's good or bad, right? What is eventually going to happen is you're going to deal with the consequences, and you can't be upset. It's just like if I'm going out tomorrow and I said I'm gonna just go sell me a couple of keys or go get me some fentanyl and start selling it, right? I understand the consequences of doing that. Okay, if I make the decision to go do that, to go sell drugs, then I should know the consequences behind it, which is probably going to be locking me up and throwing away the key. Right. So being responsible is, if I make that decision to sell drugs and I'm arrested, I shouldn't feel bad. I shouldn't be like, oh, why are they doing this to me? Or, I need to get out of here. Right. No, you need to accept those consequences. That's what I have to. That's what I learned. Right. No matter what I do in life, whether good or bad, right, whatever choices I make, be willing to accept the consequences of those choices and understand the impact that it's going to have on others. This accountability fosters not only trust, not with just people around you, but with yourself. That's what's most, you got to have accountability and trust with yourself. And without this step, the cycle of regret and denial, it can keep you stuck doing the same thing over and over again, making it harder to rebuild relationships with others and yourself. You won't be able to find stability that way and move toward a better future. Responsibility to me, and that's why I teach it to everyone that I'm in contact with. I mean, it's okay to make a bad choice, okay? But here's the thing, be responsible for it. If you're responsible for it, it will open the door to learning from those mistakes and creating a path forward that's rooted in growth rather than shame. Now, there are some emotional challenges of confronting past mistakes. You want to talk a little bit, Eric, about some of the emotional challenges about facing your mistakes?
Well, no one can beat us up more than we can beat ourselves up.
Ain't that the truth?
And one of the things about, I like how you hit on growth. We got to be accountable. Uh, being accountable for past actions, seeing the impact it made on our community, on the victim, on the people that we love, all of that has to be taken in consideration. Uh, but at the same time, the front windshield is bigger than the back because what's in front of you is more important than what's behind you. But you have to take the necessary steps to make amends with, personally, with yourself. For me, with God and myself, and if I had the opportunity, which my situation was a little different, but I did, when I got out, went and made amends to some people, whether they understood it, my reasoning behind it. It was for me. And because that was part of my forgiving myself process. Uh, at the same time, I'm still in the healing process and been out some years, still growing, still having to deal with the man in the mirror on a daily basis. So it's not an event, it's a lifestyle, but it's one that's necessary to move forward. I stopped being inmate 211203 a long time ago. I acquired some other titles, but the process in between 211203 and some of these other titles took some work. Some work on the man in the mirror. I had to ask him to change his ways. Like the song said, no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, you got to look at yourself. You got to make that change. And so, I embrace that on a daily basis because, I still got a lot of growing to do. But, I thank God that I'm not in some places that I used to be, because when you start dealing with yourself, you understand that everybody in prison ain't in jail. And to certain things in our lives, our value system, our core beliefs, and a lot of things, stepping out after having to deal with being incarcerated, being a Black man in America, those things, having to start over, relearn financial literacy to get back into the workforce and to being able to function. There's something, but there's nothing that anyone can achieve if they set their mind to it. Also, I would just encourage others, be careful who you let in your circle. What you assemble is what you'll resemble. So, kind of move in some places and engraft yourself with some people that's doing some things you want to do. Because if not, you'll have those that'll give you an excuse every day. Well, this is the way the world is. Well, we choose not to live in this world. I'm a kingdom citizen, so I have rights. I have a God that tells me I can do all things. And so I firmly believe that, and so for me, my spiritual journey is what sustained me. My spiritual journey is what gave me a point of reference from moving from the past to in the present and to move to a better future. And I can't say that I did it myself. I had to give him the glory in saying that because, in my life, it would, without, until I came into a greater understanding of who Christ was, uh, it was easy for me to function on a limited capacity. And it's just like that mic you got in front of you. It was created for you to speak through and for sound to come out. And I think a big thing with us is when we go back to the one who created us, we have a point of reference of who we are and whose we are. You know, when we out here, we take on the ways of the world and whatever's going on or whatever said, all these things, and we malfunction. For me, it was going back to the one who created me and figure out what the plan and purpose for my life was. So those things helped me to stop looking back and to move forward and gave me a point of reference and direction to have a future.
Awesome. Awesome stuff, man. And that's why I was asking about some of the emotional challenge of confronting your past mistakes, because they are emotional challenges. Confronting your mistakes is one of the hardest parts of accountability. I know for me, it required me looking directly at actions that I took that I want to forget about, and then understanding the pain that those actions caused and sitting with the weight of that reality, right? So I'm gonna say it again. Looking at the directly at the actions that I want to forget, looking directly at them. All right. I want to forget these actions and then confront them. And then also understand the pain that they caused and sitting with that weight. Just me and that, just sitting with that. So for many of us, this process can trigger feelings of guilt and regret. I know I had a lot of self-loathing. I had a lot of self-loathing when I came back into society. I used to sit around like, man, if I hadn't did this, I could probably be here. Or, I'm talking about like financially in my marriage or in relationships or in the community. If I hadn't have done this. And so it was a lot of self-loathing for me. And that's the emotional challenges that I had to face in the mirror. All right. I still deal with it sometimes. Luckily I have a partner, and I'm very much rooted in my spirituality when it comes to my relationship with God. But having that partner to help support that, that really helps me. Another thing is like, although these emotions, while they are sometimes painful, they're also a sign of progression. I do have emotions. Okay. I do have a way to look back and say, okay, that was a mistake. They actually show me that I'm acknowledging the harm that I caused and taking the first steps towards that healing. Now, however, it's very crucial for people, for you guys. I want you guys that are listening in. It's very crucial not to let those feelings of self-loathing, regret consume you. Okay. Facing the past can lead to a sense of liberation, but it's a journey, one that requires compassion for yourself just as much as accountability for your actions. By embracing the discomfort and doing that inner work, you can transform those feelings into motivation to make better choices and try to, because I'm going to say try to repair the damage wherever it is possible. Now, for me, it wasn't about erasing the past, but about taking ownership of the past and using it as a foundation for me to build something better. Right? I look at my past as a way to build something better, and that's what I focus on, because it's like that's a tough question, because a lot of people want to deal with the emotional part of the reentry process, right? I know it's like you always stress to me. You've always been, you stress the spirituality part. You have to have some type of relationship with God if you're going to overcome this, because you can't do it by yourself. You can't.
They dealing with the emotional part. I can remember a time on my daughter's birthday, and I saw the pictures of those years that I wasn't there, and it invoked some feelings, man, even some tears, and that allowed me to be able to see that there was some things I was still toting that was I hadn't really made peace with. And so sometimes things come to the forefront in dealing with yourself, for God to be able to heal them, you to be able to make amends with them, see it in its purest form, see your responsibility in it. Not to tear you down, and like you said, not to keep you in self-loathing, but use it as a tool of encouragement to be a better person, make better decisions and better choices. Um, you know, I always pride myself on the gorilla mentality. but at the same time, I'm human too. I like to go head first, and I'm gonna push it, keep pushing. But in this journey of dealing with myself, a lot of things come up to allow me to be able to say, you know what, make amends with this situation. And I really had um, to be away.
Mhm.
And my brother passed about a year and a half before I got out, and I couldn't go to the funeral. And I raised my baby brother. That's just like my son. I raised him. I'm the oldest. And to not be there to mourn with my family or to, say goodbye, or, all I could do was come home and deal with a cemetery and looking at a headstone. And that was a process that, time and God had to really heal, because even during my incarceration, there was one who came to visit me and sent money, and we talked. He had just bought a house at a young age, and I was so proud of him. But to not say goodbye, or to not be there, or to not grieve with my family was a big thing. And it took a couple of months, but we were in a place, in a gathering, where we all just let it out. And even though they had before, it was freeing for me to finally let it out. Because when we incarcerated, a lot of times we compartmentalize a lot of things. And we're totem, because we still got to keep moving. We're moving in a high paced environment, a different environment than out here. But a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. And so a lot of those things we compartmentalize. Um,
Mhm.
and so dealing with yourself is the greatest thing you can do. If I can't say it enough, listen, can't do it for anybody else. But dealing with the man of the mirror is of utmost importance to moving forward. Because
Awesome.
what as a saying that says, the seeds you sow in the valley will be the fruits you eat on the mountaintop. So when you
Mm.
see yourself in the valley, those actions, those times of despair and times of loathing, you know, uh, what you choose to do in those moments, you know, uh, affect you moving forward. For me, it was prayer. For me, it was one. It gave me a greater desire to be better. For me, it gave me an opportunity to see. In some places, I had went insane. I look at my life insane. I had custody of my daughter when she was 2 years old, and in my mind, I love my daughter, and I know I love my daughter. But my actions, I got a whole quarter key in my bedroom in the closet. The police could have come in, could have took my child away from me. I could have had a whole nother charge. And looking at it today, did I really love my daughter? Yes, I
Right.
love my daughter. But some of the insane ways of thinking, you know, can trip us up. And once we begin to deal with the man in the mirror, we can be able to see those situations, but see them at a level that, look here, I ain't trying to repeat none of that. Prison itself, the whole experience is enough to should make everybody want to make some better choices.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. Unfortunately, it isn't. Sometimes people continue to make those same choices. And I'm going to ask you this question because I had to ask myself this question, but I'm going to answer it myself first, and then how it pertains to me. And then I want you to share your moment. Now, the question is like, was there a specific moment when you had to face yourself and decide to change? Right. That was a question that I came up with when I was getting ready for this podcast tonight. And I've been thinking about it pretty much all week. Was there a specific moment where I said, you know what, I got to change? Right. And for me, the moment that comes to mind is September 11th, 2001. World Trade Center was, happening, and I was in prison when this happened. Um, and I was sitting with a counselor, and I'm looking like, dang, what's going on? This is World War III, because the thing about that, the world had stopped on the outside, but prison was still prison on September 11th. We still went to the chow hall. We still, you know, um, was outside, it hit the yard or whatever. It was just a normal day. Right? It didn't really affect us that much. I mean, for those people that were incarcerated, excuse me, that may have lost. individuals during the World Trade Center attacks. My deepest condolences, but for the most of us, um, it was like, man, that's messed up, for real. And I can remember this moment when I was sitting with a counselor, and I think I had just, went down to another side of the prison and was trying to help with a deal. Right, I was trying to broker a deal, and I got back. The buildings are falling. And this counselor, a free world guy, I was talking to him, and he looked at me and he said, "It's like, are you where you're supposed to be right now?" And I was like, "What's that mean? What are you talking about?" He's like, "Are you where you're supposed to be? Like in prison or whatnot? I mean, September 11th. That's some. I mean, buildings are falling. Are you where you're supposed to be?" And of course, I answered, "No, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be in here. I'm smart. I come from, not a well-off family, but we weren't poor either. Um, I had a father, I had a mother, you know. Some of these guys, I felt kind of high on myself. I was like, no, of course not. I'm not supposed to be in here. Never should have been here from the first place. But because of the system and all these other adverse things against people of color and young black men in general, I am here. And then that counselor, he asked me about my faith in God. He said, now, okay, so you believe that you're not supposed to be here. I was like, no, I'm not supposed to be here. And so he said, what do you think about God? Do you believe in God? I was like, yeah, of course I believe in God. I grew up in the church. Of course I believe in God. And he asked me, the God that you believe in, is he omnipotent, meaning that he's like all powerful? Is he omniscient? He's like everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Is he all knowing? And I'm like, yeah, he knows everything. He can do anything. He's all powerful. He's all this and he's all that. You can't tell me anything about my God. And he looked me square in the eye and said, so this God that you believe in, if he's all those things, do you think he would have you somewhere else if he wanted to? Have you somewhere else? You wouldn't be in prison, would you? And I looked at him. I said, I know he ain't just like kill my God, right? He just kill my God, because the one I believe in is all powerful. He can, if he wanted to, tear down those walls and get me out of that prison, right? And it was a moment for me, and I doubted everything. I said, damn, I'm up here talking about I'm not supposed to be here, but I have faith in God, a God that can move mountains, a God that can shake the world, that can save people that actually died in that. Well, there were some people that died, a lot of people, a ton of people died in the World Trade Center attacks, but there were some people that lived, right? He can change things, right? He can change nations. And I'm sitting here like, dang, God want me in here. God want me in here. He want me going through this, because if my faith is what it is, then could put me where he wanted me to be. Obviously, he wants me in here because he has not changed anything else for me. And then even after I went up for parole and was turned down like the first time, I was like, God still want me in here, you know? So that was a specific moment that I really had to face my belief system, who I was, and the responsibility and accountability that I have for my actions. Right. That's one specific moment. Can you share a moment that you might have had specifically where you had to face yourself or face those fears?
I would just say after the guilty verdict, after the guilty verdict,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Okay.
mine didn't take long. But I had prayed a prayer. I understand what you're talking about. I prayed a prayer, and I
Mm-hmm.
had faith in God. And so that situation, um, you know, the whole ordeal, I wouldn't say that it was God's will for me to do the things that I've done. but I had a greater understanding that where I was, I know
Mhm.
God knew where I desired to be. He knew my prayers, but at the same time, there was a plan and purpose. You know, to look back and to see how some of the insane ways of thinking, for him to get my attention, to allow that situation to get my attention for a greater walk with him, allows me to characterize my incarceration as not a suffering or injustice or a punishment as much as it is a closer avenue for how I walk with God and myself. So, you know, if you look for the good in it, you'll find it. And I think we both can look back at our incarceration and where we are today and say that in a lot of ways it helped define us because
Oh, yeah.
that was some ways I can look back where, hey, you know, like I say, I'm living a crash dummy life when it comes to knowing what I knew now. That
Mhm.
was some ways of thinking. Like I said, my value system was jacked up, ego, narcissistic, manipulative, uh,
Mhm.
even psychotic in some ways. Uh, you know, a selfish person, a selfish thinker, uh,
Mhm.
and you know, a lot of those things were to my detriment. Had I not got incarcerated, who knows? I might not even still be living today. You know, may have put myself in, and I have been in some of those situations.
Yeah.
So yeah, it didn't take long because I knew my what I had allowed myself to be reduced to in my thinking once I had an opportunity to look at where I was, look at where choices, where thinking, and a lot of those things had led me to be. And you know, like you said, it's not an easy thing, but it's beneficial. And you know, there was some times when now I think, but before it was on emotion, it was on impulse. You
Right.
know, so you know, I'm not one to just say, "Hey, God, put me in prison." I can tell anybody that wherever you are, when He say, "I'll never leave you, never forsaken you," His word is true and God is faithful. Uh, you
Mhm.
know, I heard a person say you can't have no peace if you ain't got no money in your pocket. Well, I didn't have no money and had a few soups and corn chips. But listen there, God gave me peace in while I was incarcerated. You know, would I ever want to return? No. Would I encourage others to? Because what I don't want to do is glorify it in any manner, because
Right.
it is a mentally, emotionally, and physically uh, traumatizing experience. And but dealing with the man in the mirror, I'm gonna keep going back to that point. If you want something different, you got to do something different. In order to do something different, you got to unlearn, to learn, to relearn, just to learn.
Mm. Amen to that. Now, for us on this show, we always want to stress the reason why we have the show. Right, we are breaking the fiction that is surrounded, like convicts or people that just getting out of prison, especially those that are focused on doing exercises like facing the man in the mirror, or just finding their footing, because it's more of an emotional and a mental toll than anything. Because a lot of times when you are faced with in reentry, that doubt seeks in. You start doing exercises like facing your man in the mirror, and you become down on yourself, saying like this is nearly impossible. Um,
Hmm.
some practical advice that I would give to people that are struggling to believe that they can change. Um, Practical advice for me. I'm gonna talk about some of the action steps that I took. Journaling was one of the biggest things that I learned to do. I used to write a lot, whether it was in the form of letters to my family or friends, or just letters to me. Right? A lot of the material that I have that goes into this podcast and that's going into my book came from in prison, because I used to just sit there and write, and then I took it away and I would keep it. And then when I got home, I pulled out this. Not I When I go back and read some of those letters that I wrote to myself, encouraging myself, saying, "Hey, look, bro, you okay? You're just in a bad moment right now. You're locked up. You worried about your family. You're worried about your daughters. You're worried about your mom. You're worried about your dad. You're worried about your wife at the time. You got a lot of stuff on your plate, but you also need to stay focused so you can make it out of here in one piece, right? I used to write encouraging letters to myself. I used to set time aside just for that. And that's what you can start doing by, even if you are out right now, I still write, right? I kind of do it. I type it now, but I still do write to some degree. Especially with conviction fiction books. We're going to look for that in a store near you. But you want to set uh, aside time each day or at least each week to reflect on your thoughts, your feelings, and actions. Journaling can help you process emotions. It helped me identify patterns in my behavior. And it also
Mhm.
helped me to clarify what goals I had. A simple prompt like, what choices am I proud of? And what would I do differently can be a powerful way for you just to begin writing.
Mhm.
Okay. Another one, and this is one I really do believe in, is seeking therapy or joining some type of support group. Right, you don't have to navigate this journey alone. Therapy can provide a safe space for you to unpack the past and develop strategies for growth. Support groups, especially those focused on reentry or personal transformation, offer community and understanding from others who've walked a similar path. I believe in therapy and finding a mentor. I had plenty of mentors over my time. Some of them I still keep in contact with now. Um, but connecting with someone who can help guide you or hold you accountable is invaluable. That mentor can provide perspective and advice, while an accountability partner ensures you stay committed to your goals. And that's what I have. I have a lot of accountability partners. I have them all over the globe. You one of my accountability partners. I don't know if you know it, Eric. Thank you for being an accountability partner because you're going to hold me to what I need to do. I appreciate that. I have them all over this country. Like I can just call them up anytime. It's like I can say, "Hey, look, I'm thinking about doing this," and they'll say, wait a minute. If it's too far off of what they understand my goals are destined to be, then they're like, hold up, nah, partner, we ain't gonna do that. What about this? What about this? They remind me of what I stand for, what I'm trying to do. They encourage me and challenge me to do better, right? So having those accountability partners are definitely important. Now each step represents a commitment to growth and transformation. I believe because for me, it's not about perfection. It's about progress and taking intentional steps towards becoming the person that I want to be. All right.
Mhm.
It's not about perfection for me. It's about just taking those intentional steps. And I say intentional with the utmost purpose because, like we talked about earlier in this podcast tonight, it's about the journey, right? It's all about the journey. Hey,
Right.
Eric,
Right.
I had a question for you before. I know you was about to give me something, but this is what I was going to ask you. Um, what small step can anyone take today? Besides like journaling, all that stuff, was there any steps that or a step that I may have missed that you can take today to face that man in the mirror?
Well, one, just doing a self inventory. I did a self inventory.
Mhm.
Um, I did that self inventory to show where I was, what I was going through, what I had done, and what it was going to take for me to move forward. Uh, you know, for me, it allowed me to be able to see, like I said, some ways I was insane, doing the same way, thinking the same way, um, expecting something different throughout my life.
Mhm.
I'm a big reader. Um, Getting out, associating with men's group. I got off and started volunteering for things.
Mhm.
Uh, so, for me, it was not oversaturating myself without dealing with myself. It was dealing with myself and kind of trying to connect with some things in line with where I want to go.
Mhm.
I like being used. I'm a servant. So I like those things. Coming out of prison and working on myself gave me a greater hunger to want to help relay the message of hope to others. So, I had accountable. I had two people that really held me accountable. And the greatest thing about these two people, one Dr. Blackman was that, he would reason with you. Y'all could have dialectics and get to goals and what you want to attain, but his job was to not do it, but to push you to do the work. And, looking back now, I really appreciate that person being in my life because that was some uncomfortability for me to get in school. I could name 1,000 excuses to not get in school, you know, um, leaving I had a job where I went to work at 3 o'clock and got off at 3 o'clock and um, had to be at school at 6. So I had to make the preparations the night before to come home, get in the shower, drive an hour and a half to go to school, get off, come back, start this process over and over. So, looking back at how my thinking was before, I could have found a million excuses to not do something that was beneficial to me. And so, we are taught that excuses are tools of incompetence to be a nothing. So when a person fixes it in their mind that they want to move forward and achieve high things in life, it's going to be some uncomfortability. But you know who you are in those times of conflict. Trials allow you to know who your true character is. And only we can define our character. So, having acceptance when you look at the man in the mirror, this is who I am today. But having a greater understanding of who you want to be tomorrow is going to set the tone for you to make the necessary steps for change in your life.
Awesome. That is very true. I appreciate that, man. We're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. We've been on. I mean, we always on here. We pretty much give nuggets out to people from personal experience and just walking walking is this crazy thing called life from a different perspective. We always bring it. So I want to thank you guys for joining us today on this episode. Man in the Mirror, Facing Yourself After Incarceration. Now, today we've explored the transformative power of self-awareness, the courage it takes to take responsibility for the past, and the incredible growth that can come from confronting that person in the mirror. Now, facing yourself is never easy. We never said it was going to be easy. It's a process that demands honesty, vulnerability, and patience, but it's also one of the most empowering things you can do. It's a declaration that you are more than your mistakes, that you have the strength to grow, transform, and build a better future. Remember the quote that I shared at the beginning of the show: the unexamined life is not worth living. So self-reflection is not about dwelling on the past, but learning from it and using those lessons to shape who you want to become. It's okay to make bad choices, but what's going to change your life is whether or not you are willing to deal with those consequences. Okay, so that's where you're going to start making better decisions. When those consequences start becoming more dire, and that's when you start changing, right? Because no one loves pain. Okay, so we encourage you to embrace this process, no matter how challenging it may feel. Start small, take time to reflect, seek some support, listen to the Conviction Fiction podcast. Surround yourself with people who believe in your potential. Each step forward, no matter how small, is a step toward freedom, not just from your circumstances, but from the weight of your past. Here's your call to action, guys. Take a moment today just to ask yourself, who do I want to see when I look in the mirror? I know when I look in the mirror, I want to see someone who is involved in the community, who is a great father, someone who's a great husband, a great friend, someone that has walked not a more perfect life, but someone that overcame struggles, that overcame hurdles, that made decisions, and it was smart enough to learn from them. All right, that's what I want to see when I look in the mirror. So I try to work step by step, commit to one action, however small, that's going to move me closer to that vision, no matter how small it is. So I want to thank you guys again for listening to the Conviction Fiction. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Together, let's keep inspiring change one story at a time. So until next time, take care and keep moving forward.